welcome back to Digital Housing. We're moving into another conversation where we're going to look at customer acquisition and marketing strategies as an evaluation tool for investment readiness, which is, I think, an important segue after the conversation we're doing, Samuels. And I'm going to talk to somebody who has not been a personal mentor, but has certainly influenced me over the last 10 years. We have had various business and other overlapping endeavors, and he has really been a source of, one, fantastic advice always, and two, great example. It's Zachary Harding. For the last 3 years, Zachary has been the president of Phoenix Group, which is a world-class private equity firm. He is the founder of Hyperion Equity, LLC, a private investment firm that specializes in outsourcing and placing capital in unique proprietary investment opportunities. Recently, founded Delta Capital Partners, and we're going to be exploring a lot of the principles around Delta and all of that. Zachary, welcome to Digital Housing. You're a digital housing veteran. I think This is your second time around. Talk to us a little bit about what is Delta? What are you trying to build?
So Delta Capital Partners is a private equity firm. Our focus is on finding businesses that we think that we can help to grow, investing, taking a principal position, having an equity stake, growing the business, increasing valuation, and then exiting at some point down the road. So importantly, this company was born out of Stocks and Securities Limited. So I'm also Group Chief Executive Officer of SSL. But one of the things that we realize is that SSL, throughout its history, has focused primarily on being a stock brokerage firm and a wealth management, asset management firm. Slightly different skill set from private equity, right? So when I got there, we looked at how we could potentially incorporate more PE into SSL, but it is so uniquely focused on brokerage and private wealth, we decided to set up a new firm. So Delta Capital Partners is a new partnership with two principal shareholders, myself and Hugh Croskery. Hugh is the founder of SSL. And no other shareholders. So it's a legally separate, distinct company from SSL. It's not a subsidiary or a sister company. But our focus is complementary to SSL, and SSL remains our primary broker for deals. So they will help to raise capital, and then we will place the capital. We will take the equity positions in Delta and help the companies to grow.
Okay. Let's jump. You mentioned SSL. Let's jump to that a little bit.
Sure.
What is the You've been in the position since the start.
One year.
What is the critical changes that you have had to make, and how will that position SSL for the future?
Sure. So SSL is nearly 40 years old, right? It has had various name changes. It was Paul Cheney and Company. Some people remember that stock brokerage firm. It's actually the second oldest stock brokerage firm in Jamaica. But as time has passed, the brokerage business, the example that I would give, it's like the travel agency business, right? So when you were young, growing up, you wanted to travel somewhere, you went to Chinese Travel or Total or wherever. You booked a ticket, you paid your money, and they took a commission from the ticket, right? That's basically what brokerage is. So we look for stocks, bonds, shares for people to buy. You'd come and say, I have $100,000. Buy some Grace Kennedy shares or NCB or whatever, and we would get the deal done and we'd take a commission. That commission fee-based model, in my opinion, wasn't something that I saw had a lot of potential for exponential growth. So we still provide it as a service. The wealth management piece now is a bit different because you're talking about larger sums of money, managing people's estates, and then you get ongoing management fees for managing those on an annual basis. Versus with a brokerage, you really only make money when there's a trade.
Sure.
So if people are not trading much, then it's salt, right? The other aspect, though, is how do you really create wealth through equity, and that's what private equity is all about. Private, distinct from public in terms of public equities are liquid, they're traded on an exchange. Private is just somebody's company and they're willing to have you put capital in and then you try to grow the business together. My background is a bit different because, and I say this with no offense to my banking friends, right? Sure. But I'm not a banker, right? And I'm
for good.
Yeah, and I'm fine with not being a banker, right?
Sure.
My background has been one of strategy, marketing, and growing businesses. Right. Looking at brands, helping to create brands, helping to grow brands, helping to move products exponentially, and creating value through that growth and appreciation in that company. But what I found is after doing that with a reasonable level of success for probably 15 years or so, I had no ownership stake in anything. So people will credit me for things like water, WAT, Ocean Spray, and relaunch of Coca-Cola, Bigger, Smirnoff Ice, stuff like that. But I didn't own any stake in those companies. So I reached a point where did that for a while, then I wanted to know, do something bigger, really more on a national level. Went and served in government as Deputy Director of Tourism, Special Advisor to the Minister of Tourism, and enjoyed that, got called back to private sector and said, you know, I want to do something for myself where I have an ownership stake, right? So fast forward, I got involved in private equity because I said I've been an operator, I've been CEO of companies, as CEO of ATL, but again, not having an ownership stake.
Which I think is how we met, because at the time I was working at MC Systems, and I spoke to you about vehicle expense management system. I actually sold that to ATL.
Correct. Yeah, man. Yeah, and I mean, so you know, I would do things like that and try to help improve companies by looking at products, services, add-ons, etc. Like, you know, you came to me and we partnered, and that was a good success. But at the end of the day, I didn't have a stake. So I said, let me figure out more how I could have a stake. So I moved to Orlando, set up a private equity firm. That's the Phoenix group that you mentioned in the beginning. Transitioned to my own firm, Hyperion, moved back to Jamaica, and then got an opportunity to go to serve at SSL as group CEO. But when I went and met with the board, I said, I'm not coming here to work for the Crossgraves, right? I know Hugh Crossgrave very well. Him and my dad worked together back in the days at Eagle. My dad was one of the founders of Eagle Merchant Bank. So I said, Uncle Hugh, I will come and help, but I need to have some sort of an equity stake. So fast forwarding a bit now, that led to the creation of Hyperion. Of Delta Capital, right? Coming out of Hyperion, because what I did is I basically took the deals that I had as Hyperion, merged it with SSL to create Delta. So that's how Delta was really formed. So Stocks and Securities Limited continues to do well, continues to perform well, continues to serve its 8,000 plus clients. Trusted brand, people know us. But there's another segment in the market where we want to get active in businesses. We want to help to grow companies and to create real wealth, and that's the purpose of Delta.
Wonderful, because we have a situation in Jamaica where I think a lot more people need to look for different vehicles for impacting emerging business.
Absolutely.
Which transitions to my question around what are you looking for just as from an investment standpoint? What are you assessing when you're looking at businesses and saying, these businesses are worthy of investment?
So that's a very good question. It's not easy. That's the first thing, right? I say this all the time. Nobody has ever come to me and presented a investment pitch that said, my business sucks and you shouldn't invest, right? Every investor pitch is great.
Yes.
It has the same exact curve, right, where you see the profits going like this and going right up. Every single one, you could just copy and paste it. But, only a certain percentage of them work. So the trick is, how can you peel back those layers and look deeper beyond? First thing that we do is we just do a regular kind of sense check. Does this feel like it makes sense? Without getting into the numbers and the details and the financials, whether they're audited, whether they're not audited. Does this just make sense as a person? Like somebody comes to you like, does this could this work or could this not work?
Right.
If we say, yeah, this sounds like something that could work, then we'll then go through the full diligence process, right? But what we look at is, what is the potential for this thing to grow? Okay, so we are not a bank. Delta Capital is not a bank. We don't give loans. So you can't come and say, Point Global looking to build a building and we're looking at $3 million loan.
You have a commercial bank for that.
Yeah, you have a commercial bank for that, right? That's not us. You come to us because the team that is in place is so diverse that we've participated across multiple industries. So our perspective and view is going to be different maybe from somebody else that you could go to, right? So, without going through the entire team, but I mean, the core members of the team, Ivan Carter, who's my CEO, he reports into me. I serve as executive chairman.
Right.
Ivan was with Sagicor for 17 years.
Yes.
He's a former chief financial officer.
Right.
So anything that has to do with financial services, you don't get any better than that regionally.
Sure.
Right? And he's a tough character, but well-respected guy. People know him, and he's done a lot of amazing things. Alison Hemmings, who's a CFO, she was with Digicel for several years at a group level. So anything to do with telecoms, anything to do with finance, really, she's as smart as they come, right? And she's a tough character too. She gets things done. Anthony Dunn, who's Chief Investment Officer, he was Head of Treasury at JPS for 5 years. He was also Treasurer at Grace Kennedy for 5 years or so. So he knows distribution, he knows technology, he knows energy, he knows financial services, and then he himself has had his own private equity firm.
Right.
So, and there's other members of the team. So across the team, we also have Sonia Nicholson, who comes from the FSC. So when it comes to like regulations and stuff, when you come to Delta, we look at these in a different way. So we try to see how can we, as our team, complement what you already have to grow it, rather than just cutting your check and saying you need to deliver a return.
Zach, why did you start this business? You could literally do so many other things. You play music. You're a phenomenal marketer that has brought so many amazing brands.
Thank you.
Your wife has an incredible company that one of these days I'm going to afford one of the pieces.
I'll set up one for you. Don't worry about it.
But why was this an important thing for you?
You know what it is, Javette? I love different businesses. I'm not the guy that could just work at one place for 17 years and get a gold watch for retirement and long service.
Yes.
I can't. Every 2 years, I kind of have to move and adjust to something else. So I like the concept of, let me see how I can help various businesses to grow. Because then that way, what I'm indirectly doing is diversifying my own portfolio.
Sure.
If I only have a food business and I just dump everything into that, and then for some reason, food industry goes belly up, then I have a problem. Right now, we're looking at several sectors. And so if I can, the mindset was, how can I own a piece of several different businesses so that my personal investment portfolio is diversified enough to withstand shocks.
Sure.
Right? So deals that we're looking at now, COVID-proof, many of them.
Yes.
Right? We're looking at something in the oil and lubricant space, where cars still have to run,
Yes.
planes still have to fly, I mean, even though travel is down, right? Machines still have to turn. That's a COVID-proof type thing. We are looking at a company right now, which I can't talk too much about, but they basically have a 5-minute COVID test, right?
5 minutes?
5-minute COVID test. Company out of Canada, at the stage of FDA approval, they've spent tens of millions of dollars of research over the last 10 years. It's not like they just developed a COVID test. This is basically what they call a biosecurity company that looks at all sorts of disease and illnesses, but there's a device that they have that you can do a quick test.
So you guys are not just looking at these in Jamaica or in the Caribbean.
Not at
You're
all.
looking
anywhere. I mean, the focus is more on the Caribbean, but so far we've closed a deal in the US, P2 Controls Limited, which is a tech security company. They have US government contracts.
Right.
That deal came to us, we analyzed it, there's some real estate involved, we closed that deal. We just closed off on this biosecurity company in Canada. This week we will close on 2 deals here in Jamaica, and then 1 that we're looking at in Barbados within the next month or 2. So we're looking regionally, as well as North America, South America.
So we have a number of entrepreneurs who are watching, who will see the feed at a later date.
Yes.
Who are founding business, they're starting business. They want to work with Zach Harding. What are the critical things that they need to know in preparing themselves for a conversation with your tough team when they're presenting their ideas? What are the deal size that you're looking at as well?
Okay, so for deals, right now we have just shy of 200 million US worth of deal flow, right? Obviously, we're raising to try and get those deals closed,
right.
But we have about 200 million US. Check sizes that we're looking at, probably 1 million to 20 million per deal.
Okay.
We're not in the range now of like 100,000 US or 200,000 US for like a startup, because we just don't have that amount of cash to then go and experiment with lots of little companies.
Right.
Importantly, and I want to make this distinction, there is an entity called SSL VC, SSL Venture Capital, which was started way before my time. And the purpose of that was to be a venture capital company to look at startups,
Yes.
right? Interesting concept. They did invest in a company that I had a stake in. But the amount of time that you have to spend to work with startup companies, you have to have a lot of money and a lot of time, right? Because they take time to grow and to be nurtured and to be guided.
Sure.
We have had to take a decision that right now, that may not be where we focus a lot on. So that company is something that we are assessing. It's listed on the market, but we're going to assess what we do moving on. So that kind of eliminates the sub 1 million type deals, because all the deals that were done under that were less than $1 million. Deals that we're looking at now, 1 to 20. Average check size, I would say probably 5 to 10 per deal. We are taking anywhere from 20 at a minimum to 100% stake, but usually up to 51% stakes in those companies.
So you're controlling interests?
Yeah, controlling, it's not critical. It's not critical, but at least 20, because for accounting purposes, we can equity account for it as opposed to just being like a little stake that we have.
Right.
So for anybody coming to us, what I would say is that's the size of the deal. We have to see where there's potential for it to grow and scale, right? Or it can be something that's just making great cash and it's a good investment. We can put it in, we can stabilize it, we can optimize it, and we can get some good returns from it. Right. But what I would say though is, and just to make this distinction, there's a difference between an idea, a good idea, and a good business idea, right? That's a creed that I live by, right? From as a kid,
an idea, a good idea,
correct,
and a good business idea.
Correct. Because what happens is that everybody comes and they say, yo, I have a good idea and I want you to invest. In their mind, what they think is, I have a good business idea, right? But in my mind, I may look at it and I may say, well, it's just an idea. It may or may not even be a good idea.
What makes a good idea a good business idea?
Okay. Simply put, something that you can make money from. Because you're in business to get a return. And even if it's not a massive profit, you must have some sort of economic impact. So even if it's a social return, but you can't be losing money.
Right.
Otherwise, that's not a business. That's a charity, I guess. We're not a charity, unfortunately. So a good business idea has to make money, right? There's a very fundamental principle in investing, which is called capital preservation, right? A lot of people, when they think about investing or getting into business or putting money in something, what they're thinking about is the return. Right. You may make return, you may not make return. The number one thing you should focus on is not losing the money.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
If you don't lose the money, then you still have a chance to make a return.
Yeah.
If you lose the money, then you're back to zero. Right?
No, I spoke some years ago at the JBDC Small Business Conference.
Right.
And the question came up, and the truth is, there are plenty of businesses. Like, for example, I've never actively sought to raise money for my current, for Point Global.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is this is not best position for that. It doesn't mean, and a lot of people get confused about which businesses should be going and raising capital.
Absolutely.
You can have a fantastic business that you don't have massive investment in machinery, massive investment in tooling. You can build a solid business. Some businesses need time to grow and understand themselves. How do entrepreneurs figure out whether or not my business needs capital to grow, or I should be bootstrapping and figuring out every little thing and perfecting that, and then when I get to a point where I say, hey, you know what, I've figured out certain things, I'm going to now try and get capital to grow. How do you make that decision?
Excellent question, and there's no one answer, because it depends on the business, depends on the person, right? Some businesses can't grow beyond a certain point, right? You can't be, I can't think of a good enough example. You can't be selling, like power cords and think that you're going to become the biggest power cord seller in the region just so when there's 100 other people selling.
Right.
So you might just have a niche. You might just say, Kingston is my area. Let me just sell power cords in Kingston. Lock that down. I can make enough money to feed my family and to grow and put aside some money and invest. Some businesses, though, have a lot of potential to scale. So investing is all about a risk-reward ratio, right? If you have a business and you just sell power cords, you might say to yourself, okay, what's the potential for me to really grow it throughout the region? If the potential is 100-fold, and you really believe that there's a way that you can get it done, and I shouldn't really say believe, but you've researched and you've figured out how to get it done, then there's no problem taking an investment. Because then I know if I go to Javette and he gives me $10 million, I can turn it into $100 million. That's fine. If I'm just making $1 million now and I'm going to struggle to possibly get to 1.5, why would I come to you to borrow $2 million? Because I'm going to be in debt.
Yes.
I'm better off just juggling the way that I was before. So the first thing would be realistic and to also manage your own expectations. Now, that is not to be confused with putting limitations on yourself.
Right.
You have to dream big. You have to think. You have to believe that you can conquer the world.
Right.
Usain Bolt didn't get up and say, you know what, probably I could run alongside this man. Yeah, maybe I could time, and maybe I could come in second and I wouldn't look to. No, he's just like, I'm going to be the fastest man in the world. End of story. Done. Yeah. Committed to it 100%. So you have to have that belief, but you have to also be realistic.
Yeah.
So, not to pick on my friend Hugo, right? But he also said, I want to be a championship football player.
Yes.
And so he went, 2 trials, end up in Australia, 2 match, wasn't really working. And so he said, okay, fine. That's also being realistic without necessarily not going after a goal. Right? So you have to be realistic with what your business is. Now, everybody thinks that their idea is the greatest idea ever, and they're going to be a millionaire and a billionaire, and they're going to be the next Mark Zuckerberg. Yeah. The math tells us that that's not how it works. Right. So you have to be a little bit practical, right? And try and be an expert in your field. You can't just say, I'm going to go into the power distribution business, and you've never worked in distribution before. Right? Go work at a distribution place. Go work at Electrical Depot or somewhere else and get a little bit of experience before you just get up and say you want to go and do this.
Yeah. It comes back to something I hear Damian John says. Like we have this idea where a lot of people say, I don't want to work for anybody. And that's the reason why I want to start a business. But in reality, even if you start a business, you work for people. Yeah. If maybe you should go do something else. Yeah. So that's an important distinction. But I want to shift the conversation a little bit to what's happening now with COVID, what's happening now globally, and where corporate leadership has to come in, where conscious capital has to come in. Absolutely. In the Jamaica landscape. Firstly, what is your outlook given COVID for the Jamaica and Caribbean economy?
Right. COVID is going to cause a serious problem for us for the years to come. And it's not so much just because of the COVID illness itself and the risk and the reality of people dying. People are dying from heart disease, and they're dying from hypertension and they're dying from diabetes and other things too, right? So we'll continue to have COVID deaths. The numbers will continue to rise. We're at maybe 6,000 now in total. We might get to 10, 15, 20, 60, I don't know. And we're going to have some more deaths. That's not the part that I'm worried about so much. Part that I'm worried about is that our economy is very dependent on certain sectors, in particular tourism. Right, so we've seen all the debates on Twitter and different people back and forth. What's the contribution of tourism to GDP, etc. And pick any number you want, 15%, 40%, it doesn't really matter. When people cannot travel to Jamaica because they have restrictions on their end or we have restrictions on our end, or the demand for travel is low because of the fear of illness, that's a major problem, right? If we're dependent on people coming into our country to generate business and they can't, or let's say they can, but it's only 50% of them coming in, that's a major problem, right? The hotels won't have enough people to be able to generate enough income to pay the staff. That's just a reality, right? I sit on the board of a regional airlines. I represent the government's interest in that airline as a shareholder. And planes need to be flying at 50 or 60% load factor to be able to break even. Right. So every time you get on a plane, if you see less than 50% of the plane full, it's losing money. Now, it's not a little bit of money they're losing. It's plenty.
Jet fuel is expensive.
Right. Very expensive, right? So you could just wake up one day and you could just hear some of the big carriers file for bankruptcy. Right? And that carrier who was carrying or flying 7 flights a day, just gone. And it's not so much a case where somebody else will just automatically pick up the route because it's based on demand. So if you have a significantly reduced demand for air travel, that's going to affect tourism. And then the 300 to 350,000 workers who are impacted by tourism, roughly 100,000 directly, but there's another 300,000, in total that are affected. That's something that we have to consider seriously, right? That has a trickle-down effect on a lot of different things. My wife was talking to me last night and she said, just randomly, something I never thought about? The impact on people that supply things to schools. Right. I was just like, what? Supply to, I just never thought about it. She was like, if your business is selling exercise book and pencil and eraser and rulers and geometry set, and people are just not going to school, that hurts. And I was just like, that's serious, I just didn't think about it. So there is a chain reaction of interconnectivity of businesses that gets impacted by other things. So
what's the role of a corporate leader in shifting our economy, though? What's the role of leadership in saying, look, this is the reality. Whether we like it or not, COVID is here. We have to deal with it. How do we retool? What kind of leadership should be brought to that process?
One word, and it starts with I. Innovation. There is no other way around it. If you're only thinking of things that you've already thought and are only doing things that you've already done, you're already behind.
For Jamaican businesses, I know the next question is, okay, we are super creative people.
Right.
We create all the time. How do we move that creativity to innovation?
Right. Moving to innovation requires getting rid of fear. Right. The stumbling block to innovation is being afraid. Like, we can't do this thing because it may not work. That's a fear-based mindset. Right? You have to say, we have to do this thing or else we're dead. Right. And that will create a whole different set of inspiration and parameters for you to work within. So it has to be one of change or die type of mentality. Right. Everything that we know of today, every business that exists, every book that was written, at some point it didn't exist. Somebody had to come up and say, I want to start a thing called Point Global. And a man say, that's foolishness. How that going to work? And you have to say, no, it's going to work. So innovation comes out of being brave and being able to say, we're going to do this, we're going to explore doing this, and we're not going to fear what it is that we don't know.
Our first speaker wore a shirt that said, why not?
Right.
I think the entire theme that comes out from the conversations today actually point to that. So you have been in environments where marketing has been used as a tool for customer acquisitions for years.
Yes,
Whether that was when you were with Cinco, ATL Group, and the Jamaica Tourist Board. So you're a marketer at heart.
Yes.
And even though you have shifted to the other side, the dark side.
Yes.
You're a marketer at heart.
Yeah.
When you're looking at business, when you're looking at the economy, how much of that lens are you bringing to it?
You know what I'd say, Javette? I would say I'm a people-centric, focused person at heart, right? So some people may, style me as a marketer. That could get very pigeonholed into, advertising, promotions, customer service. I see myself more as a social scientist, right? I'm very interested in people, and I'm very interested in people's behavior, okay? So in any business, whether it is selling liquor, appliances, Jamaica, whatever the case is, investments, it always starts with a person. So you have to convince somebody to make a decision to do something. Even if it's a corporation, there's a board or a team of people that have to agree on that decision to buy your product or service. So for me, it never starts with the product. It always starts with the customer or consumer, right? So you have to be thinking, especially in these times, what do people want? Or what could people want that maybe they don't even know of yet, that you could package and deliver to them that would make life easier, better, cheaper, faster, safer, healthier, right? So my approach is always, what do people want? So going back even to, the Delta Capital environment now, what people want is new and innovative investment opportunities. Because anybody can go and buy stocks on the stock market, and we encourage them to, and that's the business that we're in, the fundamental business. But people say, I want something different, I want something unique, a little off-market, where I can manage my risk, but I can provide a good return for myself, for my family. So we are looking at that. You may say, now, you know what? People want content.
Right.
So I can't have a physical event with 300 people in a room. I'm going to produce content. And I'm going to monetize that content. And by the way, I might be better off, because before I could only charge, $3,000 for people to go to a hotel here in Jamaica, but now I can broadcast this all over the world. So it's always thinking of the consumer or the customer. What can I deliver to them to delight them and excite them? Most importantly, going back to the good business idea part, where they would be so inspired to pay money. Because sometimes people have a cool idea, and they want to do this thing or give it this thing, but people not prepared to pay for it.
I know what I always say, because I run a marketing and branding firm that is focused on emerging businesses, and for the last 10 years, that's what we have been able to do, and we have made as a matter of fact, stocks and securities. As we sit here, a lot of things are coming back to me. I know a conversation with Mark Croscray actually shifted how Point Global operated. And I think I credit for saving Point Global, where in February we'll be celebrating 10 years. So as we sit here, it's around a simple shift. And it was a conversation at the time we started in the incubator at University of Technology. And Mark came to give a talk to my staff, because we used to have these things where in an evening I'd call somebody and they say, would you talk to my team? And in talking to the team and understanding how we do business, he said to me, instead of being so focused on startups, there are businesses that are like 3 years old, they have a valid business idea, and they are the ones who are validated enough the idea to want to actually go in the market and try experiment, try to innovate. And that actually changed my own outlook on business, which is why we have survived. Maybe I would have a corporate job somewhere else. So, Mark, thanks for that.
Great advice. Great advice.
But it comes back to, again, my question around conscious capitalism, around what do leaders like yourself who are occupying a seat now, who can influence the Jamaican startup landscape, that can influence the entrepreneurial mindset of Jamaicans, what needs to happen? Because we see what's happening with digital, we see where we are with digital, we see the opportunities for digital. What needs to happen from how do we lead ourselves, or how do we ensure that we get where we need to go overall?
Right. The answer is authenticity.
Yeah.
Right? The leadership must be authentic. It must be real. I could always pretend to be anything. I could go into politics and pretend to be a million things, right? That doesn't really satisfy my soul.
Right.
When somebody is a manager and you are managed by somebody, it makes you feel that that person is a boss and they're in charge. When somebody is a good leader and they're leading you, they make you feel like you are in charge and you're the most important thing. Right? So good leadership is about being authentic, whereby I want to see Javette succeed. I genuinely want you to do well. Not like I need to be the big man and boss you around and tell you what to do for me to feel good. That doesn't make any sense.
How important has mentorship been to you?
It's been very important, but it has been very unstructured.
Right.
And that's something that I think Jamaica needs badly. Right? So my mentors in my life have been football coaches, teachers, and a couple of bosses. Some were great, some were horrible. Right? But I learned from all of them, one way or another. But I think a formalized mentorship program is something that is drastically needed, especially in this time. Right? Because you can sit with somebody who has 20, 30, 40 years of experience, and in that 1 hour, learn so much that might save you 5 years of trial and error. Right? So the concept of mentorship is critical as it relates to leadership. But leaders must also, they must be honest, and they must do so with integrity. I watched a little clip this morning, somebody sent it to me. Left Side posted it on his Instagram page. Will Smith was watching this race, and it was a triathlon somewhere in Europe, and two guys were coming into the final leg, and the guy who was in front took the wrong turn. And so the guy who was in second took the right turn, and he could have ended up winning, and he stopped before the finish line and waited for the other guy to come and said, no, this guy was in front of me. And we're competing, but he would have won. He just went the wrong way, and he made him go through, and he won. That's integrity. That's living a life with integrity and honesty. And if you can do that, then you can galvanize support, and you can say to people, okay, this is the right way to do things. They talk about integrity being doing the right thing even when nobody's watching.
Zachary, as always, there's not enough time. Amazing conversation as always. I'll allow you a minute or so to again talk about what you're doing at Delta, how people can reach out if they think it's something that there's some mutual benefit there. And in doing so, I'd love for you to, we have tons of emerging business watching, to just give a parting shot to them as well.
Sure. So our interest at Delta is really in building Jamaica and building the Caribbean. We feel that this can be done through investing appropriate capital, as Javette would say, conscious capital, into the right teams and in the right companies that have a vision of how they want to advance themselves. The first thing that we look for is character and integrity. Right? So I don't want to work with companies that are making $1 gazillion, but I can't sit down and play dominoes with them and feel that they're not going to rob me playing dominoes. Right? That doesn't interest me. I'm not here forever. I can't take whatever money I have with me. So while I'm here, I want to live a clean life, and I want to do so with other people who share the same values. And that's an important part to us. What value system are we investing in? We want to look for businesses that have the potential to withstand shocks and to also move the needle. So what I live for is really my kids, right? I want my kids to be able to say, before daddy was doing this, this used to happen. But after, him and a group of people got together, and then they did this, and then life was different and better for people. If I can go to my grave with that, then I would have achieved a lot and I'd have been super wealthy, regardless of how much money I have or don't have. So for the businesses that are coming up now, not everybody is cut out to be an entrepreneur. I know it's actually a subject in school now that you can learn, right? But some people are just better off working at a corporation. and just contributing to the growth of that corporation and being on a team. Other people are meant to lead and to set up their own businesses. Know what works best for you, and don't be afraid to try both. I worked at a bunch of different places before doing my own thing. And some people may do their own thing many times, learn from it, and then go and work at another organization. So be flexible, be open to feedback, and always do the right thing even when people are not watching.
Ladies and gentlemen, Zachary Harding, conversation on business model, innovation, customer acquisition, and really financing. Zachary, always a pleasure. Thank you very much. I'm sure this is your second time speaking at Digital Housing. I'm sure there's going to be many more. It's always a pleasure.
Happy to come back.
I'll call you for a coffee one of these days as well.
Yeah, man.
And thank you very much. Guys, we're going to have an amazing session coming up. We have Jeffrey Hall. We have William Mafood. Stay tuned. In a few minutes, we'll be back for those conversations. Thank you.